Hello, everybody. My name is Mario Rodriguez, and along with Alberto Rival, represent the how to use the AEM Editor to integrate with third-party systems. Yes. Just an overview. We wanted to take you to our journey. We wanted to show you how everything started with a challenge from a client to integrate a product information management system into AEM in new ways. We wanted to have some flexibility, imagine such that editors can add just a product property, whatever they want in a component, and some either additional complexities on the catalogs for different countries and language. And we wanted to take you to that. Our hope is that our experience will help you in case you have similar situations of integrations, and also if you want to centralize content, content reuse. We deep dive as important classes and some patterns that we use, and some that didn't work too. And we'll give you a live demo along the way. So what better way to spend your afternoon? Yes, let's talk about our problem, right? Everything started with a similar situations. Probably if I ask you what is the most or the least thing that you like about third parties, there's a lot, but some of these things we wanted to take to the next level. We wanted to have a complete, as you see here, direct connection to the PIM. So not on those patterns of integration in which you duplicate the content in AEM. No, everything is in the PIM. It's centralized there, as you see there. The PIM offers an interface to a middleware that hosts the GraphQL application. It's another key part of the architecture because it allows you in the query to select which properties you want. If you are in a country which you have 20 attributes, or if you are in another country you have 200, you can configure that in the GraphQL client. This is very powerful feature that Andreas Haller suggested to us. Is coming from the CIF, the Common Commerce Integration Framework from Adobe. So it's very nicely embedded into AEM because you normally think in GraphQL client outside the AEM with your own stuff, but in this case, it allows you to integrate with configurations, with promotion to different environments, to different things. And you see that along the way. So what were those crazy customer requirements? So let's say our client called Marcus, because we cannot disclose the company, it asked us to have, and this is probably why you should not ask an engineer, I bet you that you cannot do this. But of course, we were challenged to do that and we wanted to do it. So it's part of our passion to go with this solution. And to have a list of product attributes that can be changed by editors in each brand. So you think that in this big company, you have brands that want fabricate shampoo, those makes laundry detergents and other things. So a lot of sites, a lot of countries, and a lot of languages. We want to have a centralized way to do it. UI was very important. We wanted to have also the ability to select the property anywhere on the page that they wanted, any component. So we were looking for a global transformer approach. A key value, a key that you put on the page that gets replaced. And then we said, yes, this is going to be easy, right? We're going to have a global transformer similar to what we have in a link checker. So we came up with this placeholder approach. I have to show you because there's no other way that you can see it. So let me see if you can see here. I'm going to expand a little bit. This is a product page. And in this title component, you can see this is not, I want to be a warning, this is not HTML. What you see here as a product loan description is actually a placeholder that tells in our logic, get the loan description from products, okay? And all of this is done online. So when I go and view as published here, the values are automatically replaced, okay? We'll talk about performance, talk about some issues that we receive on performance and how we work around those. But this is the approach that we want, a complete replacement of your placeholders. You also notice that we have extra placeholders and they were automatically removed out of the page. We also describe that. So going back to what is a placeholder for approach. Oh, and I have very important, Alberto, I almost forgot. Yes. All these attributes, as part of the requirement, needs to be available to the editors. They can select any feature, say text that needs to be sent for the front side or the down to be available to them. And you can also type it whenever you want. So it has to be completely flexible to that end. It's very, very good. So in a nutshell, what is this placeholder approach? So you have a syntax similar to HCL, but not quite, because we are placing those values in the ACR, it's safe, and then we are replacing them. We'll show you how. You have some conditional logic on those placeholders. You can say, okay, I want a default value in case this property is not present, or you want two properties and a default value, or even you want to replace properties from other pages. And that's another good pattern that we use. Let me show you a little bit in implementing what we call a teaser list, or relying on experience fragments. And for those of you who are not that familiar with experience fragments, it's a way that you can centralize the content, you can reuse the content, you can put in one place how the products will look like, and other pages can refer to that. So you can change the layout. So a good example to this is, here is a list of products. So you just point a component called teaser list that points to a group for the page. You have product 1, product 2, product 3 below. Then you can choose which layout based on an experience fragment. So how does this experience fragment look like? It's here. It's very simple, right? But you have one central place where you can control, add an image, add a column control, and whoever you want there. And once you roll out that experience fragment, it applies to everything. So that's where the properties can even come from those experience fragment pages, right? That's an important key factor. I know there's a lot, but hang on in there. Key factor of this architecture was the sling output rewriting pipelines. And I said, most of us have dealt one place and another with the link checker and play with the link checker. And we applied the same logic. We wanted to have a global way to change code, and we want to apply it at the end of the pipeline, of the transformer. How does it look like? So basically, here you have how the pipeline works. The SAX event generator is an inventor of SAX events like the XML. And then you create a transformer. Right? Serializer is the end that puts everything together. The placeholder transformer extends the default transformer, and you can easily point to key. We use a placeholder service. It's very simple, SEI service, nothing fancy about it, but it has a good design of what we call property providers. So it requires a property based on a name, and you can have many property providers. In this case, one of them is the GraphQL client. As I said before, you can have some other things. Let me show you more in here, more in detail. Right? So the property providers can provide with the value. Thanks, Victor, if you are in the call, for help here. And it's basically, the other point is that the values are retrieved from the request. In case the page gets painted or the component many times in request, you don't want this expensive call to the GraphQL client. That's another key advantage of the architecture. So in a little bit of a summary, what we have seen here is that we empower the authoring. Editors can select exactly what property to the most flexible level. You can actually have a current configuration. We have a context-aware configuration that allows you to select different product catalogs and locales. And you can also integrate conditional logic. So the result is what we call the back-end placeholder implementation, because we also had a front-end implementation, which has some advantages too in some use cases that Dragan Filipovic one day will present. He promised me that, but yes. And before I handed this to technical details to Alberto, I wanted to say that this is a team effort. This is really a slow cooked code. Over 3 or 4 months, we have been developing this, and a lot of people participated on this, and so I'm really happy to be part of it. So I hand it to Alberto.
Yes. So I have the hard part of trying to explain how it technically works. So next slide, please. as Mario said, this is always those are OGI services. We have on placeholder service, OGI service. We have property providers, OGI services. We have Slim models, the transformer, and we are going to try to explain how this was born, how this is working now. So it's a slide, please. Yeah, first was this idea of the property value providers. Victor came up with this idea about property value providers, and those are OGI services that have simple interface. The simple interface has basically two methods: one method to retrieve the list of properties, and one other method to actually get the properties, the property values. And for us, each property value provider is a black box. We don't mind if that property provider is doing a query to a GraphQL API. We don't mind if it's querying another database. We don't mind. It's a black box. We can have as many property value providers as we want. And it's amazing because all the special logic is encapsulated in that property value providers. And the property value providers can have different properties based on the page for which we request the properties. And also different property value providers can have different concept configurations. So in a brand, we have different attributes than in the other brand. So every time that we call one of these methods, we pass the page and we pass the request, because from the request is going to obtain the concept configurations. Next slide, please. And the first property provider that we implemented was this GraphQL property value provider. So this is a property value provider that is using the Adobe Thief client to do a request. To do a request to a GraphQL API. But the customer requested that this should be generic. So we have a concept configuration where we specify which client ID are we going to use, which query are we going to execute, and which attributes are we going to request in that query. So it's totally dynamic. If we have a different query, if we have a new brand that needs a new attribute, we only need to change this context, our configuration. We don't need to do a new deployment. And that's it. And a very important thing is that we have two methods in the property value providers. We have this get property names that is very fast, but we also have this get property values. And in this property value provider, the get property values actually creates the request and actually does the request. So it's very expensive, slow, and it costs money. So we need to avoid calling that get property values if it's not needed. That's really important for something that I'm going to tell soon. Next slide, please. We also have these other property value providers. We already said that we can have as many as we need. So the moment that we started to use this placeholder mechanism for teaser list and for each item in the teaser list, we noticed that we may have a teaser that is not product related. We may have a normal teaser, and we only need to obtain the teaser title from the page properties. So this is a very simple property value provider that receives a page and returns the properties from that page. For example, we have this teaser.title, we have this teaser.image.reference. We are doing some special magic in this property value provider. For example, in the last sprint, Victor added an attribute to get the first image of the page for pages that don't have a teaser image. And as we have some brands that don't have theme at the moment, we also have a tab in page properties with product attributes or with product properties. And so this page property value providers also exposes that product properties in the page properties like attributes. And next slide, please. So about the transformer, I want to add only that we are using this string substitutor from the Apache Commons. And this substitutor expects to receive a variable resolver, and we have this placeholder service string lookup that is doing actually the call to the placeholder service. And we always thought that it was going to be enough with having this transformer at the end of the pipeline, that we were going to do all what was needed at the end of the pipeline. But next slide, please. we started to have a lot of components with special logic. For example, I have a title, that title has a placeholder, and what happens if placeholder has no value from PIM? Okay, we don't want that title to be shown, so we need to hide that title. But it's not only in the case of the title. We have special cases where we need to provide a fallback in case of the placeholder is not present, or we have another cases where we need to, for example, we need to move from the text the list items if this list item has an empty placeholder inside. So we tried to implement everything in this Slim transformer, and we implemented everything in Slim transformer, but it was too complex. It needed a lot of XML processing, a lot of regex, and the code was starting to look horrible. So 2 weeks ago, we decided to, next slide, please. We decided to start doing these checks, these special logics in the Slim model of the components. But our idea is to keep the replacement at the end of the pipeline. So we still replace at the end of the pipeline, because for us, it's and for most components, it's more than enough with replacing at the end of the pipeline. But for the special components, we need to do this hiding and these other special logics in the Slim model. But now we have an additional problem. We have the component Slim model and the placeholder and the placeholder transformers calling this placeholder service both. So we know that the call to the GraphQL API is expensive, and we need to try to avoid calling it because it's expensive. So next slide. We implemented a special logic in this. We implemented this placeholder service with cache mechanism. What is this cache mechanism? This cache mechanism is that we store the property value provide values in the Slim request. So every time that we request the properties from a property value provider, we store those attributes in a request attribute. And the next time that we call the placeholder service to retrieve a property, it's not going to call again that property value provider. And we also have mechanisms that if a property is unknown, it's not going to call that property value provider because it asked before if that property value provider knows that property. Yeah, this is all to avoid unnecessary calls to PIM. And we have also a lot of logic that was in the transformer that we moved to add it to the service. For example, now we manage here the default values, this mechanism about page prefixes for the teaser list, and also we have an error management system that shows error for the outputs managed here in this placeholders service. And next slide, please. And as the front-end part, we have these placeholders widget. This was developed by Rafal. And if you have text, the author can type the placeholder. This is for the placeholders to make the author's life easier. And we have a placeholder servlet that is going to provide to this widget the list of available placeholders. So this placeholder servlet does a query to the property value provider to check the properties that are available for that page. And yeah, we have other components where instead of introducing the placeholders, you can choose the attributes from a combo, and we have a placeholders that are stored for that purpose. So next slide. In summary, I want only to add one thing, that is, next slide, please, that OCA is amazing. So all this is possible to have generic placeholder services is possible because we have OCI in AEM. And we have a lot of possibilities to explore in OCI, and a good object-oriented programming design can achieve codes that a simple code is able to do a lot of things like this is doing. And we have another slide to summarize everything, I think, Mario.
Yes, I think just to add to that, yes, we achieved the configuration flexibility, right, to integrate different data sources. We haven't shown you the context-aware configuration and what's OGI behind the scene, but yeah, it's great. I think we have an elegant solution for this stream transformer, something that can be maintained and evolved. We use the requests. We also want to extend that when needed to have more caching power. And one of the coolest one was to add this conditional logic at the component level. That's how it said.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And finally, we need to thanks a lot because this all started with the can you go to the next slide, please? With the Marcus request about I was in meetings with Marcus where Marcus was requesting, oh, I want the author to be able to select the property. I want this to be generic. I thought that it was impossible. But at the end, we were able to do that. So thank you for proposing us to do impossible things. And we also need to thank Andreas Haller because he was the one who came with the idea of doing this in a Scenes transformer, to do all this replacing in the Scenes transformer. He was also the one who proposed to use the VIF client from Adobe. We also had Victor. Victor is the one who makes the impossible things happen. And Rafal, who was the one who implemented the backend part. And Sasha came with the idea of these placeholders in teasers and supported a lot of the pull requests. So thank you to all the team. And I'd be glad to work with that this great team that is able to achieve these things. And that's all. I think that we can wait for questions. If you have any questions, you can write it on the Q&A section or in the chat. And of course, if you have any doubt about this approach, you can directly contact us. So at the end, what we have is, for me, what's important is that this property value provider mechanism, we can use that as is like HTL for authors. And of course, we're hiding a lot of logic that is behind this. For the author now it's easy, but we are hiding a lot of things that are happening in the background. I think that we have a question. Yes. Do we cache the response of the property servlet? Royd? Yes, we cache. What we have is for the same request, we don't do the query to the GraphQL 2 times. So we store for the same request, we store a cache in the request, and the fifth client has also a cache mechanism. So what we can set up is the cache in the fifth client, and internally we are creating our cache in the request. We are evaluating. The question is very good because we are evaluating to move the cache to an upper level, but we think that we should delegate that to the fifth client because the fifth client has a cache mechanism. So we should use that cache mechanism of the Adobe fifth client. And what we do is that, for the same request, we don't do 2 times the same request to the GraphQL client. Yeah, but Victor and me were discussing if we should do this cache in other level. Do you have any more questions? I think that we have something in the chat.
Yeah, Mahesh is asking if the transformer logic runs for non-project pages. So, for example, we have other. It's a global transformer.
What is doing now? It works in all pages. At the moment, it was only working for product pages. Because at the moment, at the beginning, not at the moment, at the beginning, we said only to replace product properties, and product properties were only in product pages. But the moment we started to have other page, to have the page property value providers to get, for example, the teaser item, it didn't make sense anymore. So at the moment at the beginning was only for product pages, but now it works in all the pages. But if the page does not have any placeholder, it does not call the property value provider. That's the trick that makes it performant. The trick is that before sending the request, we check if that property is needed. Or we find a placeholder, we check if any of the property value provider has that placeholder, and then we do the request to the property value provider that has that property. That's this question from Edwin, because you are thinking about Adobe Commerce, where you import the process into AEM, but in this case, we don't have the product data in AEM. In this case, the product data is in an external service, and we are not importing data. In the moment that we are rendering the page, we are launching the request against the API and replacing the placeholders. So we only store page properties, but we are not storing that product information in AEM. The moment that we show the page, we are doing the request, we are replacing the placeholders. It's not like in other previous implementations of Adobe Commerce, we imported the data into AEM, but that's not the case now because we don't have Adobe Commerce in Adobe as a cloud. So what we are doing is that when the page is rendered, we call an API and we replace placeholders.
And it's Adobe AEM as a cloud service.
Yes, it's actually that started all because with migration to Adobe Cloud, we didn't have Adobe Commerce anymore, so we needed to look for a different solution. This was the beginning of this solution was because we needed to make it work in Adobe Cloud, and in Adobe Cloud we cannot import commerce data for products. So we came with this different solution. Thank you a lot.